Good day, guys. Welcome to Endurance Room. Today we're going to be doing an overnighter in a primitive style Wickiup. This is a project I started several days ago. It's built mostly from maple saplings. And it's been lashed together with just some jute twine. It's pretty efficient to do that way, and the twine is degradable, biodegradable, so it will break down over time, and as the shelter isn't being used, it will disintegrate into the forest. So my goal tonight is to do a little work on the frame, do some more reinforcements, and I'm going to build a raised bed. I've got a browse bed in there right now out of some pine boughs from an earlier camp, but I'm going to actually do a raised bed with one of my Plash Palatkas. I'm going to build a small frame, and I'll show you guys how I do that. So to construct the raised bed, you're going to need two saplings that are a little bit longer than your body, at least longer than the Palatka, which is 6 foot. Behind me here are some tulip poplar saplings. They grow nice and tall and straight. It's about 2 inches in diameter, so that's perfect. Next, we're going to need something a little bit larger to place underneath the two longer poles that are going to be supporting the Palatka. So to find that, I'm going to look around and see if we can find any deadfall. Yeah, something like this looks perfect. All right, so we're ready for the Palatka. So in each of the four corners of the Plash Palatka, you're going to have these large grommets. They're different depending on the generation of Palatka. The older ones are leather. I've got brass, aluminum, but they all seem to be in the same diameter and they're in the same location. Just going to take some cordage, about 8 feet in length. You want them to overlap. Thread your cordage through and tie it off in a manner of your choosing. So then along the length of the Palatkas, I'm just going to go along and stitch up the cordage through the buttonholes. The material in the Palatka, much like the material in the Gorka suit, is very tightly woven canvas fabric, and it cuts wind. So if you've got an insulating layer underneath your wool blanket, you take something that, it'll keep the chill off, and add the Palatka to it, and it dramatically increases the insulating value. That's what I did at the Pathfinder school. Instead of using a queen size blanket, I just used a military blanket, which was lighter weight, and then I had my Palatka already as a rainwear. On the nights that it was cold, I used it as a bivvy. I just folded it over. That worked, but if you were to actually stitch it up like we just did here, that would it would increase the insulation way more. So yeah, don't pass these up as a sleeping aid. to beef up your sleep system. Even tonight, I've got a wool blanket, and I've also got a green sleeping bag from the MMS sleep system. This will be my first time checking it out. I'm pretty excited. But this could be used to beef up the sleeping bag. It can be used to beef up the wool blanket. It can be used to beef up your jacket if you're just running around doing stuff out in the weather. So these are awesome. It's a great piece of gear. Okay, so we've got our Palatka in place. Now we just need to stretch it out and apply tension with our pegs that we cut earlier. So I've got the stretcher pinned on the inside at the back of both logs, stretching out the Palatka, and then I'm using the other two stakes to pin the logs back against it to apply pressure from the other side. And there you have it, guys, our raised bed with the Plash Palatka. Using one Plash Palatka, I ended up moving two of the larger logs down to one end. They weren't quite wide enough, but I'm okay with that. There's enough bedding underneath that I'm not too worried about it. I just want to get up off the ground. It's really wet today. So yeah, this gets me up off the ground, so I don't have to worry about conductive heat loss from touching the cold ground, because this just sucks the energy right out of you. So I've done a little more lattice work on the frame. Put a few more cross pieces in. But it's just starting to rain. It's about 5:45. I'm going to throw my tarp up and get a roof on this shelter and then keep working. Here's a look at the framework before I cover it up. This is my first time putting this style of shelter together, and it took me about 3 hours to set this up so far, and that's been messing with the camera and, you know, sorting things out. So if I had to do it and the resources were readily available, had a saw and my hatchet, I could probably knock that structure out in about an hour and a half. So it's not too bad. This twine is super efficient, effective cordage. If you're just doing something temporary, quick, and you don't really care, like for long-term usability, this is great. You can't beat it. You can grab a roll for like $2 and do a ton of projects with it. So we have a shelter. Not too bad. More or less got 3 sides of cover. I think I want to do my fire right inside and just do a real small one, and then I'll be able to feed it right from my bed. And then right out front here, I'm going to do heat reflector. So I've gone and taken some of the bark off of this tree. It's dead here. And I'm using that to build up a heat reflector and help enclose my shelter. Well, just inside the shelter, I've got a Dakota fire pit. I've got the main hole here, which is about the size of a coffee can, dug out, and then the vent hole. The wind seems to be coming from the west, which is this way. Is right here. It's about the size of a soup can, and it's angled down into the main hole where the fire is going to be. And as you can see, it's pretty wet out here today. Water is already filling up. So what I'm going to do is look for maybe some wood and kind of lay that across there to elevate my fire. But yeah, once the fire gets going, I get some embers. Hopefully it'll dry the ground out around me and it shouldn't be too much of an issue. So I've just taken some dead branches off some of the standing trees and split them down. It's all pine, it's fat wood. I layered green branches at the bottom and kind of built it up, laid some bark down, and then stuck some of the wood that I just split for a fire lay. And I'm just shaving off some fat wood. Good morning. It's a bit of a wet one. It rained most of the night. The Dakota pit was so-so. I'm on a bit of a hill here, and the water seeped down into the pit. So yeah, it got me through dinner. The raised bed worked really well. That was my most comfortable night's sleep I've had in the last 5 months. It's my first time using a sleeping bag since last summer. I used the green bag from the MMS sleep system. It's rated to about 30 degrees Fahrenheit, I believe. And I just had my wool blanket laid underneath the sleeping bag on top of the Palatka raised bed, and it worked out really well. My back was nice and warm throughout the night, and that's usually the biggest factor from the cold ground sucking the heat out of you over the night. But yeah, I slept really well. I slept I'd say from like 11 to 6:30. So that's awesome. That was a great night's sleep. No real complaints with the shelter. I used some bark off of one of the dead trees to make myself a little windbreak and to fill out the shelter, which is actually pretty cool. It'd be awesome to cover that with bark. Yeah, Pennsylvania is just starting to fill out. It's all greened up now. Now the undergrowth is going to start picking up. One more month, and this place is going to be really thick. I was really happy with the sleeping bag. I've been roughing it with wool blankets basically since last summer, but I started winter camping in January with just some wool blankets, and the sleeping bag was nice. I treated myself today. I've had the sleeping bag for about 6 weeks, and I haven't got to use it because I've been preparing for the Pathfinder schools, which is going to be minimal wool blanket style camping, so I just kept that rolling. But I definitely enjoyed the sleeping bag last night. I use my Plash Palatka as a bivvy quite often, and literally I'll just do the same thing. I'll make a taco and fold the Palatka in half over top of my wool blanket, but over top of the sleeping bag would have the same effect. It would help insulate it. And just like we stitched up the Palatka along the one side to do the raised bed, to make the stretcher style raised bed, you could do that and then insert the sleeping bag inside of that envelope that was created, and it would make a pretty nice bivvy sack. It's this same fabric that's used in these Gorka suits is the fabric that's used in the Plash Palatka. This might be a little bit lighter, I'm not sure, but it's basically the same fabric, and it stops the wind, it blocks the wind, yet it's still breathable. But because it's tightly woven like that, and it stops the wind from coming in, it helps retain heat on the inside, which is awesome. When I first experienced it, I had my wool greatcoat on. I filmed it in an earlier video. I'll try and leave a link to it. But I had my wool greatcoat on with the Palatka worn over top of it, old school Eastern European style, and it was like night and day difference. Like, my wool greatcoat it's aptly titled. It is a great coat, but when it's combined with the Palatka, the canvas on the Palatka, it's a whole other animal. The heat retention it jumps up dramatically. If you've got a Palatka, I would score yourself a wool greatcoat, especially if you're in any kind of area where you get a good winter. Like, it's awesome. They're made to go together like bread and butter. But these Gorka suits, it's the same design. I've had this one for about a week now, and it's awesome. So good. I promise to do a full review. I want to get some more time in it. I've got a lot of points that I would like to go over with you guys about the Gorka, but I want to spend a little time getting some road use out of it. I hope you guys enjoyed. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for stopping by Endurance Room. You guys are awesome. Cheers.